Hi everyone, today I'm going to be looking at DIY miniature kitchen, and if this is actually written in Korean, but what it says is that the model name or the manufacturer is DIY miniature, but that it is actually made in China and it's actually imported from China, and there's a distributor for the trade. So what that tells me is that this is actually not a designer product that was made in Korea as much as it was imported in from China. So I don't know who the actual manufacturer is going to be, but in this kit, as you can see, it has all the parts in there. There's this kind of really cool miniature refrigerator that's actually just pre-built, but it comes with a bunch of pieces of paper they're going to be cutting out to glue on to either a cardboard or wood pieces. So this is kind of like the other box theater models that I've been working on, except that this is going to be a miniature of a kitchen. I actually received this from my friend who was visiting from Korea, and so her family was staying at my house for a little bit, and as a thank you gift she actually brought this miniature house DIY kit for me, which I thought was really great, and so I was actually really excited to work on it. So as you can see here, it's preloaded, or all the pieces are inside these bags with letters on it with A, B, C, D, and so they'll tell you throughout the manual of, you know, use B1 or C2, so you kind of have a better clue of where which bag the parts are in, so you don't have to go scrounging around everything just to look for that one piece. So this is actually going to be a pretty long video. It's going to be about, I believe, 22 minutes long. But I won't be talking throughout most of this video because it's pretty straightforward. Well, not straightforward in the sense of you just, you know, kind of put the pieces together and just click it. There is still a lot of manual work you have to do, like cutting out the pieces, forming some of the shapes. But for the most part, there's not really much to talk about. I may chime in here and there if I wanted to actually bring up a certain thing, just to make sure that you are aware if you're building along with this video, just kind of pointers just to tell you what to look out for. A little tip for this paper bag piece with the kind of jagged edge. What I actually like doing is just starting on one angle and just kind of making all my score marks, and then turning the paper the other way and making the other row of marks so that it becomes a triangle. And then after that, I'll go back in with my X knife and kind of pull off the pieces. This is actually better than just doing each triangle piece at a time, because then you're constantly having to rotate or move your knife around. While if you did it the way I did it, you know, it's a little bit faster just because you're doing less work rotating things and realigning things. It just kind of makes it a little bit more faster process. You're gonna see me switch between two different glues. One is this Instacure along with the Instaset spray, or I'm just gonna be using a normal tacky glue. I tried using the glue that was included within the set, which was actually like a liquid hot glue gun. And what it is that, oh sorry, not hot glue gun, but the hot glue kind of glue. And what it is that it's kind of like a liquid form of what you'll be using as hot glue, so it's very sticky. And the problem with that is that it's actually very viscous and it's kind of stringy when you're kind of gluing things on. So I actually don't like using that, but I do like using the Instacure, or it's very similar to like super glue and tacky glue. And I will actually be using the super glue a lot for joining the wood pieces together or a little bit more sturdier pieces, but I'll be using the tacky glue a lot for anything that's kind of paper. And the reason why is because the super glue will actually soak into the paper and it will actually discolor it, or it'll actually kind of ruin the paper. So I try to avoid using the Instaset with the paper stuff. So as you can see here, I'm actually using tacky glue to lay on the very thin veneer piece of wood, because I noticed that using the super glue, it actually soaks up, because the wood piece is so thin, it's almost like paper, and it does actually discolor and harden using the super glue or the Instaset. So the tacky glue works better in these parts, and the tacky glue is actually it dries fast enough that you don't have to worry about waiting for it to dry for a long time, and so the tacky glue actually works better. Hopefully, if you're going to be building this model, or if you got a hand of this model and you're going to be building it after watching this video, I'm hoping that you watch this whole video first before attempting to build it, because one tip that I did want to mention was that, as you saw when I was putting that top plate into the box did not fit as well as it should have, which means that it wasn't glued on properly. It was probably a little bit smaller than it needed to be. So my only advice would be to actually to verify that the box is the right size while you're building it by using that kind of wood plate, just to make sure that it kind of fits in nicely. When working with the paper pieces that you're going to be gluing together and creating sometimes a box, what I like to do, and a little tip, is to use like a tweezer or a forceps to kind of get in between and squeeze the pieces in together, just to make sure that you kind of have a very nice seal between the paper with the glue. It's actually hard to do with your hands, so using that kind of forceps actually helps a lot to make sure that you're pressing down very hard onto the paper. There are a few wire pieces that you're going to have to be bending, and so my tip is that you should probably invest in some round tip pliers if you do a lot of model building, because it's very useful, especially for like these metal work. I'm actually using a round tip plier to be able to kind of bend the piece around the metal wire around the plier to kind of get that nice curvature, and then you can have it be very even with all your pieces, and it's gonna be very uniform. So for the towel that you're going to be putting on the towel bar, one little tip I like to do with these fabrics, especially because when you're cutting these fabrics, a lot of times the edges are going to fray. And so what I actually like doing is using the super glue to Insta-Set and kind of gluing the edges, and it'll soak up the fabric. And what that actually does is that once it dries, it hardens at the edges so that it won't fray anymore, and it kind of stiffens up the fabric too, so that it's like kind of actually easier to kind of shape. So it does not look uniform just because the edges will be darker and it will be harder, but I think it's worth doing it just because I noticed that with the fabrics they always fray at the edges regardless of how careful you are with the cuts. A lot of the miniature kind of paper pieces, you're actually going to be gluing onto the cardboard and then cutting out the individual pieces, and so the cardboard actually gives you the thickness so that it becomes more rigid and it doesn't kind of bend too much, because some of them will take a beating, especially like the toaster pieces and stuff like that. You are actually going to be doing a lot of work on it, so the stiffness of the cardboard actually does help a lot. Out of the whole build, I feel like I had the most difficulty with this toaster. The problem was that you have the top and the bottom plate that you're wrapping the piece of paper around, and since there's nothing really holding the two pieces of paper together except for that middle piece that you're adding on, the paper, it's kind of hard to keep it all kind of lined up, and so I was struggling a lot with it. And after you build the toaster with the paper, you have to add on 2 wires that wrap around on the top and the bottom and shape it according to the size of the toaster. So I've actually had a little bit of difficulty with that. The rest of the model was pretty straightforward and easy. It was just like this one toaster was such a small scale with a lot of detail for such a small object that it is a little bit of a struggle. So just have a lot of patience when working on this piece. this was another difficult piece because you had this round circular pink piece that you're supposed to cut into a spiral, and then you're gonna wrap the spiral from the center around until you make a rose shape. And so even though it looks really simple and it was really quick, first of all, to get that kind of nice spiral shape cut was a little difficult. I would actually suggest using scissors. I actually started off using an X-Acto knife, which proved to be too difficult due to the curvature all the way through. So using a scissor would make it a little bit easier. And then trying to wrap it around using your tweezers and then gluing it together so that it stays in place was a little difficult. So the trick I did was, after I wrapped it, I used super glue to just kind of glue the bottom part where all the pieces of paper are kind of meeting together, and then using Instaset to make sure that it cures right away. Another good tool to have in general is this kind of step ring tool. You might see this one or something similar to it, where it's actually a set of pliers where one side has like these half moon cylindrical shapes, while the other side is just a flat plier or a round plier sometimes. But in this case, I actually like having this just rod with different steps, and so that I can actually just create the different circles that I need for metal wires. And it's been proven to be very useful, especially with these kind of small miniature models. The baguette that's going to go inside the paper bag is a little tricky to see, but what it is that you're going to crumple up the pieces first until it becomes kind of rough, and you kind of get some kind of white fraying areas or creases, and then you're actually going to twist it around until it kind of looks like a little snail, and that's actually going to be your baguette piece. So it doesn't have to be perfect just because it's mostly going to be hidden by the paper bag, but kind of having that rustic look actually makes it look nice because it's a rustic bread. We're almost done with the model, and I wanted to kind of talk about the wiring. The wiring is actually very simple, but since I'm spinning through this video, it's going to be hard to see, but what I'm doing is I'm gathering all the white wires together, and then I'm actually rotating it around until it kind of all holds up together, and then I'm using this kind of tape that's provided, and the tape is actually meant to kind of just cover the exposed wires. And you're going to do the exact same for the purple side too, and that's all you actually need to do to make sure that it's all connected properly to the battery pack, and so that when you kind of switch it on, everything should work properly. And so it's actually not that hard at all. So here's the final model. There's actually a plexiglass box that you're going to be creating that comes with the kit that you're going to be using as a cover, but I kind of wanted to show all the pieces without the glass on it first. It's just such a great model. I love the colors, I love the design of the kitchen, and all the little things like the food, the pot that's on the stove, and everything just looks really nice. And here are some final shots that I've taken with my phone. This is without the box, just so that you don't get that kind of glare, and I can actually zoom in to look at the features and all the little details of every single item. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with the amount of detail on this model kit, and it just looks really great, and it was very well thought through.